Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the 4LadsHadADream podcast. I'm your host. My name is Stevie Clifford. And joining me tonight is regular sidekick, Mr. Chris Jack, Evening Times Herald and Herald Group Senior Sports Writer. Chris, how are you tonight?
Very good, Stevie. Thanks for having us on once again.
Always, Chris, always. Also joining us tonight, and first making her debut with her, is Heart and Hand's very own Caroline Morrison. Caroline, how are you tonight?
Hi, Stevie. I'm very well, thanks. Delighted that you've asked me on, so thanks very much.
Of course. And our special guest this evening is former Rangers star midfielder and striker, Mr. Gordon Smith. Gordon, how are you tonight?
Very good, Stephen. Thank you. I had a game of golf today and I did quite well, so I'm quite pleased with that.
Fantastic, and lovely weather for it as well.
It certainly was.
For those of you and some of our younger listeners, Gordon Smith signed for Rangers in 1977. He was a treble winner and a League and Scottish Cup winner the following season. Gordon started his career following in the footsteps of his grandfather by signing for Kilmarnock in 1972. And his first foray into professional football. Your grandfather had won 2 Scottish Cups with Kilmarnock, Gordon. How important was it and how much of an honour was it to kind of follow in his footsteps?
Well, it certainly was. The unfortunate thing was that, Stephen, I never ever got to meet him. He actually was dead before I was born. So it was kind of inspiration to me, the fact that I had a grandfather that had been a player, been a Kilmarnock player, and, living down in Ayrshire as it is. And even to this day, Kilmarnock have won 5 trophies in their history, and my grandfather is actually the only Kilmarnock player who has won 2 trophies for Kilmarnock. No one else has won 2. He was in the Scottish Cup winning team in 1920 and then 29 when he captained the team to win the cup. So that was a great thing that he managed to achieve that, and he was very first in the Hall of Fame when Kilmarnock started the Hall of Fame a few years ago.
One of my good friends is ex-Kilmarnock fullback, left back Martin Baker. So he wanted me to say that you are the second Kilmarnock legend that I've spoken to. So there you go.
That's good. Martin was a good player. I had him when I was at St Mirren assistant manager. He was there. And I was his agent for a little while too. Did he tell you that?
He didn't mention that, no. But I will be sure to speak to him about it.
Remind him.
1977, Gordon. Rangers come calling in a £65,000 move. You're a boyhood fan. When did you first hear of Rangers' interest and how did you feel about it?
Well, the strange thing was I'd heard before. Derek Johnson had told me a couple of times in Scotland trips. He said, Jock Wallace really likes you. He talks about you when we're playing against you, and nothing had happened. And the strangest thing was, obviously, I was now playing the left wing for Kilmarnock, and that's where I was playing for a few years. And what happened was Rangers lost the first game of the season to Aberdeen at Pittodrie. And that was the Saturday. And the Monday, I was at my work and I got a call from the Kilmarnock manager to say, "Where are you?" And I said, "Well, you've rung me. You should know where I am." He said, "No, I got your number from the secretary." I said, "I'm at my work in Glasgow." He said, "Are you far from Ibrox?" I said, "No." "Why?" He says, "Just sold you to Rangers. See you there in half an hour." So I went along to Ibrox. And because Davy Cooper had signed and I was playing the left wing, I didn't say anything until I'd signed the actual contract. And Jock Wallace, the first thing he said to me was, "Welcome to the club, Gordon." He says, "That's taken a while." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "I've been trying to sign you for the last 4 years." And I went, 4 years? And he went, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I've got to ask you this." I said, "You've signed me now and you've just signed Davy Cooper, who's a left winger." And he says, "No, the first time I saw you, you weren't playing the left wing, you were playing centre midfield." He says, "And that's where you're going to play." He says, as far as I'm concerned, he said, "You're the last piece in the jigsaw. I'm going to play you in the middle of the midfield and you're an attacking player. You can go forward and link up and get in the box and score goals." And I said, "Well, that's exactly where I want to play." And Kilmarnock hadn't been playing me there. They wouldn't let me play there. So Jock Wallace saw that in me, and I'll never forget that. And I must thank him greatly for 2 things: taking me to Rangers, who I wanted to play for, and allowing me also to play in the position that I wanted to play.
That's quite interesting because a lot of people, when they think of Gordon Smith, think Gordon Smith striker. But in your first season, you were coming to Rangers and Rangers were in the back of a barren year, having won the treble in 75.
Yep.
They didn't win anything the following year, and then you came along. Some of the highlights that season, 2 goals in the 3-2 win at home to Celtic. You had also a goal in the 3-1 win at home to Celtic. He managed a hat-trick as well in the League Cup third round versus Aberdeen 6-1, which was obviously a massive result because Aberdeen were very strong then. But the first season, domestic treble, you scored 27 goals in 52 appearances. What was that like for you? Because obviously you came from Kilmarnock playing left wing. You've said you moved to where you wanted to be in the middle of the park. So obviously you've kind of answered that a wee bit. But making that step to Rangers and having such a successful first season, you're obviously a treble winner, which we've only done 7 times. Looking back on it, what's your memories and how proud are you of that season?
Oh, my memories are absolutely fantastic of it because, I got in this. They played the second game. I joined up, and Jock Wallace said to me, "Wait till my fitness was the same as the full-time players," because I was part-time at Kilmarnock. And but then he got a shock when he had the training session after the second game. They lost to Hibs the second game too, and he got quite a shock the next week when we were doing a hard training session, and he noticed that I was fitter than most of the lads were because I was always a fitness fanatic. And I trained very hard and I kept myself in good shape. So I got in the team then. But it was a dream. I'll tell you why. I did change my style of play slightly because at Kilmarnock I was more of an individualist, and I used to take on players and beat players. But when I went to Rangers, and because of where I was playing in the middle of midfield, I didn't have to do that because there's so much quality in that team. Because we were one of the first. We played a system which is now quite prevalent in the game. We actually played a 4-3-3 or even a 4-5-1 because Derek Johnson, when he was on his own up front, with 2 wingers in Cooper and McLean, who were tremendous footballers, passers of the ball. Midfield alongside me was Alec MacDonald and Bobby Russell, and they could play. So I was actually just joining in with them in the midfield. Then I was going to support Derek Johnson. So a lot of people thought, a lot of fans to this day do think, you're absolutely right, Stevie, that I was a striker because I was getting in the box a lot. I was getting up to support Derek, and I scored 27 goals. And it was fantastic to score that from midfield because, as you said there, I got the winning goal in the cup final against Celtic as well. League Cup final, as I say, I scored, in my Old Firm debut, I scored my European debut, my league debut, and it was a fantastic season. I'll never forget it. It's something that just is so special to me. The memories I have from that 1 year in the team, that first year I was there, are probably the best memories I have in football.
So to put that in context, if we're and what you were saying, and the kind of formation is probably similar to what Rangers played now in terms of the midfield 3 and the front 3, although slightly varied with not 2 wingers. But if we were to have a player in the midfield at the moment that scored 27 goals like you did then, you wouldn't be at Rangers for much longer, I don't think.
Well, it was quite funny because I remember I got picked to play for the Scotland under-21 team, and Ali McLeod, the Scotland manager, named the team and he put me up front. And I said, "Oh, you put me up front in this game?" And he went, "Yeah, well, that's where you play." I said, "No, I don't. I play midfield." He went, "You scored 20 goals." I went, "Yeah, for midfield." "All right. Well, you're playing up front here tonight." And I was like, "That's fine." But that's what he thought. I mean, that just showed the Scotland manager didn't even realise I was playing midfield. And it was special because Derek Johnson was a fantastic front man on his own, great touch and could bring you into the game. As I say, with passers of the game, with good players. Bobby Russell and Alec MacDonald could also get forward. But that was my role. And Jock Wallace did say that he said to me, "This is the style of play I'm going to play." And he says, "You're the last piece of the jigsaw." That's what he said to me when I signed. He says, "I want somebody that can come from midfield and can play midfield, but can get in the box and can get goals." And I was so pleased that he identified the fact that I was capable of doing that because that's it was where I wanted to play. I wanted to play for Rangers, but then to play in that position as well and to make it in a great season when we actually put together some great performances. And the one you mentioned, Steve, with Aberdeen, we beat them 6-1. Jock Wallace has said in an interview, I remember even after he was away from Rangers, he said that was the best performance in his time as a manager at the club, was the performance that night against Aberdeen when we beat them 6-1. Moving
on slightly onto your teammates, and obviously there was a lot of kind of older heads in the dressing room, Jardine, Greg, Derek Johnson, for example, been at the club for a good few years. Also, like these guys had brought European success to Rangers. I've heard it being said before in interviews with yourself that obviously you signed with Davy Cooper and you were close to Coop, but he found it a wee bit difficult the transition to a full-time dressing room with older experienced guys who maybe tested you and things like that, with a wee bit of banter and things like that. How did you adjust to it, and what can you tell us about Coop and his time in the dressing room with yourself?
Yeah, it was an interesting dressing room because it was a mixture of that. We had the three new players that come in were myself, Davy Cooper and Bobby Russell. I was actually probably the adjusted easiest to it, because when I started at Kilmarnock, from 14 years of age, Kilmarnock allowed me in my holidays from school to train with the first team players. So I was used to the banter that goes on in a full-time dressing room, which is quite harsh in terms of the stick players give each other. And it's, you're not meant to take it too seriously. You're meant to fight back at times. Now, what happened was, I remember Davy Cooper was reacting to it a little bit. And because I was going on well with him, I had to take him aside and say, listen, don't bother about that. It's just taking the mickey. They're not right. They're not trying to get at you. They're not criticising you, saying you're rubbish or anything like that, because a lot of the times they were making jokes about it. One time, one of the players did say, when they were putting out the strips before a game, I remember, I'll never forget one, he said, is that Coop's pyjamas you're putting out there? That was the joke, right? So that was I saw Coop's reaction to that. So I had to take him aside and say, just get over it. And what happened was he did change, because he became somebody himself that actually could hit back and give a bit of stick out where it was required. But it took him a little while to adjust to that, because he hadn't been used to that. He'd been at Clydebank, part-time team, coming through the ranks. Bobby Russell was a bit the same. He came from Shettleston Juniors to Rangers, So I was fortunate, as I say, I've been in with full-time players before for quite some time, even though I was part-time eventually at Kilmarnock before I left. So Davy had to adjust to it, Davy Cooper, and Bobby Russell did as well. As I say, it was easier for me to adjust to it because I was used to a bit the banter and giving a bit of abuse back when you got it. But it was a strong dressing room. I mean, the thing about it was, although they gave out a bit of stick, I think there was a lot of respect in that dressing room for each other in terms of what we did. Because as you said before, we were the kind of new guys in the team, but the other ones that were there had all been achievers, really. Right from Peter McCloy, Sandy Jardine, Tom Forsyth, Colin Jackson, John Gregg was in that team as well, Alec McDonald, Tommy McLean. It was a very, very experienced team. And that's why it was a pleasure to play with these guys, because they were, guys that you could rely on in order to make the passes, see the pass that was on, help you in a game and all that sort of thing. So that's why I think the mixture was absolutely tremendous.
We touched on, obviously, your teammates, and obviously there is some legendary figures in there from Rangers 72 winning team. Something that people maybe don't know, is it fair to say that John Gregg gave you a wee bit of stick when you first came to Rangers?
He did, actually. I found it quite strange, because as I arrived there, I just signed, and I was coming up to my first day of training, up to the main door at Ibrox, getting in the door, and Sandy Jardine and John Gregg out a taxi at the same time. And Sandy Jardine came over and says, well, welcome to the club, Gordon. Good luck and all that. And Greggy came over and says, I don't know what I've signed you for. That's what he said. And I said, well, hopefully I'm going to do a job for you. And he was like, all right. And he just walked away. And I thought it was a bit of a strange welcome from the captain of the team. You're expecting him, even if whether he meant it or not, just to say, oh, good luck, hope it goes well. But that was his first words. And as I said, he was quite hard. But as I say, I had to, because I was used to people like that at times, giving a bit of stick out, I could take it, as I say, and I just thought, I'll go on with it. It didn't affect me at all, but I'll never forget it in terms of thinking, well, especially when he became the manager, I thought, well, you don't know, I'm not one of his favourites, obviously, come right from the very start. But, he never ever said at any time that I got it wrong, you've done a great job, or anything like that, So I think that from that point of view, I don't think he saw me as a player that was going to come in because of maybe having played against him, because I was playing the wing at Kilmarnock. He didn't see me as a player that was going to fit in as well as I did.
Did he soften towards you after such a successful season, or was it just the way of John Gregg that, as captain, he maybe tested people just to see how much they wanted life as a Rangers player?
Yeah, I think that what I did find with Greggy was, even as he was a great captain to play in the team. I mean, we gave everything, and you could always rely on him in terms of how he played. I was a great admirer of that. But in terms of in the personal side of things, what I found with him was he couldn't really give you as much praise. He would normally give you criticism more than he would give you praise. I remember he said one day when he was manager, he said, "What about that chance you missed?" And I said, "I scored 2." And he went, "Yeah, it could have been a hat trick though." Right? And I went, "Oh, okay." So that was the way it was. He was quite hard on you, and he very rarely ever did remember him coming up and saying, "Well done," or anything like that. And the strange thing was, the second season I was at Rangers, a lot of people don't remember this, Stevie. The fact was, the first season I got 27 goals, but the second season at Rangers, I was top scorer. So I was playing midfield, so Greggy was still playing me in that position in the midfield, and I was top scorer under him in his first season in charge. So, even at that, I never really felt I got a lot of praise from him, despite the fact that, we were so close to winning a second treble, and we got to the quarterfinals of the European Cup that year as well.
That's actually leads us perfectly on to what we're about to discuss. Obviously, season 78-79, John Greig, Rangers don't start well. One league, I think one win in the first 9 league games. But that season, we finished second, Scottish Cup and League Cup winners, but there is a successful run in Europe. We got to quarterfinals, and you finished the season top scorer with 18.
Yeah.
So your previous comments have obviously kind of kick us on to that. How different was John Greig as manager, as John Greig as player?
I would say he was a fantastic player. He gave everything. As manager, he was actually good tactically in terms of how he liked to play the game and tactically and all that. He knew the game pretty well. I think he was better than Jock Wallace in that side of the game in terms of the tactical side of things. But I think that in terms of his man management, I think he had more of a problem with that. I think he found it hard to manage people. And that was what was a difficult aspect of it. And I think in the end up, I think that's maybe why we never got the performances that season, although we're so close to it. I mean, there's no doubt about it that he had 2 great European wins, 2 games that were not expected at all. Beating Juventus in the first game when they were favourites to win the European Cup that year. A lot of people forgot that they actually. And I think it was 7 players in that Juventus team were in the Italian World Cup winning team a few years later. So that's how good they were, and we beat them. And then Eindhoven had never lost at home. Quite a few Dutch international players in their team, and we won there too. But there was a lot of that season. I don't know if you remember, or people would know this, that there was a lot of, there was bad weather, and there was an awful lot of cancellations of matches, and we had a very, very harsh programme to try and catch up in. And it was when the games came around later on, the league games and the European games and all that, we definitely had injuries, and it was difficult because of all the games that had to be fitted in to that season. And that took away a bit from it. Whereas I still felt, and I was still disappointed in 2 things in that season, and the biggest disappointments for me. One was losing the final game against Celtic when Celtic won the league at Celtic Park. That was a terrible night for us. And the second one was the fact that we lost to Cologne in the quarterfinal European Cup, having beaten 2 better teams in earlier rounds, and that was down to the fact, I think, it was injuries and suspensions.
That was something I was going to touch on. The next one, obviously, the European run and beating Juventus, PSV, and then losing to Cologne. After beating Juventus and PSV, was it ever discussed, or was there a feeling in the dressing room that we could do this? This might be our year, because as you said, Juventus were the favourites, and PSV were unbeaten at home, and they were 2 top sides. And Cologne, to be fair, Cologne were very strong, and history tells us in Germany they are a very strong side. How did you feel about that European run, or how did the squad feel at the time about European run?
I think we did feel it after we got through the Eindhoven game. There was definitely a belief that we could go on here. We've knocked out 2 of the best teams, and the teams that are left in it, there's still some good standard of teams in, but there's no one really is better than Juventus. And the second thing was Eindhoven were tremendous as well. So we had the belief that we actually could win the European Cup that year, and that's why it was a major disappointment when we went out to Cologne, because we did feel, even though they were a good side and all that, we did feel that if we played the way we played in the earlier rounds against likes of Juventus and that, we would have beaten Cologne and gone through. And you look at the final that year, Nottingham Forest played Malmo, and I think we could have beaten both of them.
Does that rank then as a huge disappointment for you, or do you kind of move on and think, well, it was Cologne after all, it was football, or is that? Or do you ever think back and think that was a definite opportunity missed?
Yes, very much so. I think, I found it very hard to take both those things. As I said before, the Celtic game, having lost the league then, and then the European team, the European Cup, because I do think, and I honestly believe this, that we could have, hadn't been for circumstances, we could have won that. And as I say, that's why it was majorly disappointing, because, as I say, we knocked out two sides. Eindhoven, I think, were the favourites after Juventus went out, and we drew them, and then we won in Holland as well, which was fantastic, having drawn at home. So it is still a major disappointment, because I don't think even to this day people really talk much about it and think, well, wait a minute, that Rangers team could have done it. And as I say, Greggy's tactics were good in those European games. He got it right.
Domestically and into season 79 and 80, it pretty much fell apart for Rangers. We were fifth in the league, out in the League Cup fight, Scottish Cup final defeat to Celtic 1-0 in the final, which was quoted, the riot-torn final. Only 6 goals that season. I say only, again, from midfield, that people would say that's a decent kind of return, but your previous seasons having got, over 25 and then 18 in the second. What happened in the final season to Rangers?
I think there was no doubt we lost it a bit. I don't know what it was, because of the disappointment the year before. John Gregg started to make changes in the team in terms of how we played, in terms of the system and how things were. And I think there was no doubt about it. There was just a feeling, I don't know what it was. It was a low atmosphere about the dressing room and all that season. And it was really weird, because, as I say, we weren't playing too badly, but we just couldn't get results. And it was after what would just happened the 2 previous years. I mean, I know the second season would be seen as a downfall after the first treble win, but we still played really, really pretty well in the second season. But the third season, I don't think we were playing that well. And as I say, a lot of changes were getting made. Even I was starting to get left out for games, big games, Celtic games, and I was starting to be put me on the bench at times when we're playing Celtic and games like that. So although I get six goals, I made a sub a lot more in that third season than there'd been in the 2 previous seasons. So that was a disappointment as well. But having said that, it's the strangest thing. I got offered a 5-year contract by John Gregg, and in May of that year, and I signed it because I wanted to stay at Rangers. I never thought for a minute this is going downhill. Rangers are getting terrible. I want out here. That wasn't the case at all. I signed a 5-year contract.
Well, that kind of it perfectly takes us on to the kind of the final questions of your time at Rangers. You've just signed a 5-year deal, and you're settled, and you're playing for your boyhood heroes, and you're not wanting to go anywhere. Brighton come calling, and you tell an interesting story about this, because again, not a lot of people will kind of know the background to this. But tell us about Brighton. Tell us about going down there and your kind of intentions and what surrounded that.
Yeah, what happened was this. It was the season was finished, and John Gregg phoned me, and he said, Gordon, he says, Alan Mullery's Brighton manager has been trying to sign you all season. He's been in a few times for you. He goes, I don't want to sell you. He says, but he's a friend of mine. Can you just go down and speak to him anyway? And he said, I don't want you to go. I went, okay. So I said, I'll go down. So next day, I go down, and I never thought anything about it at the time, Steve, but Davy Probin, who was one of the coaches at Rangers, ex-Rangers player, he came down with me. I never thought anything about it. And it was the most fascinating thing. I sat in with Alan Mullery, and he said, I've been wanting to sign you. I saw you scoring 2 against West Ham, last when we played in the Tennant Caledonian tournament. I've been trying to sign you since. I was like, all right. That contract I just signed for Rangers was £200 a week, right? And the first offer I got from Alan Mullery was £400 a week and £30,000 to sign on. I said no. Chatted a bit more, went to 450, 35,000. I said no. It went up to, right. So to cut a long story short, it went to £600 a week and £50,000 to sign on. And I said no. So he said, look, go and have some lunch, and we'll talk again after lunch. So this was a good meeting for about an hour at that point, and the money kept going up. So I went for lunch with David Probin, and he said, that's some money, Gordon. I went, I know. I said, it's unbelievable. I said, compared to what I'm actually getting. He says, you're not thinking of taking it? And I went, I'm not taking it. And he went, well, okay, I might as well tell you, Gordon, we've done the deal. We've agreed the money. And I went, what do you mean? He said, we've agreed the fee. We want you to go. I said, that's not what John Greig told me. So I phoned Ibrox, and Greggy came on the phone, and he said, have you signed? And I went, I'm not signing. He said, yes, you are. I said, I'm not. He said, you are. If you don't sign, I'll make your life hell. You'll never kick a ball in the first team. You might not even get a game in the reserves. He says, and I'll have you in morning, noon, night training. And I was like, oh, I can't believe this. So you want me to go? He goes, we've done the deal. You're sold. So I went back after lunch, had my lunch, went back to Alan Morley and said, I've had to think about it. I'll come. So that was how it happened. I had no intention of going to Brighton, but I talked to John Greig now because, in fairness, what happened, Rangers were on a downward spiral. I didn't see it. I just signed a new deal, as I said, and they were in a downward spiral for a few years. And I went down to Brighton and had a lovely time there. I really enjoyed being down there, living down there, playing for the club, the people I met, playing in English football. So I do say to John Greig, I know I didn't like the way you did it, but you did me a favour.
Gordon, we'll skip to the end of your playing days and moving into the agency world. Why did you decide to go down that route rather than doing coaching or management or trying to forge a media career for yourself? What was it at that time that attracted you to becoming an agent?
Well, what I had done a bit of, because I had a business degree, when I was playing for Kilmarnock, I did a business degree, and what happened was when I was actually playing down south at Man City, I went on some courses regarding finance and looking at how pensions and all that work, and next thing I got contacted by a company when I'd given up the game, a company in London called London and Capital Financial People, and they wanted me to become a financial advisor. So I became a financial advisor for them, and they had quite a few footballers as clients, and that's why I was involved in the financial services. But then I went back to St Mirren. Tony Fitzpatrick offered me the assistant manager's job there. And I went back to St Mirren and I was there for 3 years. And then I didn't go on with Jimmy Bone. He came in as a manager. Jimmy Bone and I didn't see eye to eye, and I left, went back into financial services, and then went to work for a firm of chartered accountants as a financial services manager. There was a UK company. And what happened was I actually enticed them to set up an agency, a football agency, because we had footballers as clients. And after had it going for a little while, we brought in an agent, and he left to go to another job, and they asked me to do it. And I did it for about 6 months, and then realised I can do this on my own. I don't need a firm of chartered accountants as my bosses here in my company. So I took the business away and set up my own. And I was an agent then from that time, which was 96 until about 2007 when I got the SFA job.
Which some of the more kind of bizarre or strange details that you've had to put in guys' deals? You must have a few kind of obscure ones that chairman have tried to put in, or players have tried to put in at the last minute without stitching them up if you don't want to.
No, it was the type of thing that you had to be. I was quite lucky in one respect. My knowledge and my contacts were great, because I remember one time I had a player who was going down south to a club in England, and I phoned the PFA in England, and I said, look, I don't want any names here, but what's the kind of wages, the highest wages they get there? And the guy said, well, I can look at, we got all the contracts here. So he told me the highest wages of the players at the club. So the next thing, I'm sitting down with the chairman of this club in England, and he said, I'm going to make your player the highest paid player here. And he made me an offer. And I just said, that's not the highest paid. How do you know that? I said, it doesn't matter how I know it, but I know you're lying to me. So let's start again with this negotiation, because I had the contacts to find out all these kind of things, and I could speak to people, and I know people in the game. So it was a great help to me being an agent in respect to the fact, because I'd already been in the game. I don't know how some of the guys actually cope with it at times if they've never been in the football world and realise how these things take place. But it was always interesting to do it. But it was like, there's a lot of shifty people in that business, as you might imagine. It's just in terms of what people know and what people say and they tell players. I remember I had one player, I won't mention the name, but an agent, he said to me, I'm going to go to the top league in England. I said, I've spoken to everyone and no one wants you. And he said, well, I'm going. He says that another agent says he can get me there. And I just said to him, right, okay, you can go to him then if he can get you a club in the top league. And that player ended up in a Scottish Premier League team. He never got to England because, the guy had just told him a load of rubbish and told him lies. But that's what you find a lot in that business.
You also then left that world to move into the SFA. How do you reflect on your time at Hampden in terms of positives and negatives and the impact that you made? Is there things that you regret doing and things that you wish you could have done better, or are you fairly pleased with how it went over those years?
Not too much, Chris. I'll tell you why. Because at times there was the only thing I would say about it was I didn't do my due diligence enough when I got offered the job in terms of how much powers I had. Because I went in there and thinking that I could run and change a lot of things, and I found out pretty soon when I was in there, quite a shock to me. No, you can't. All you can do is make recommendations, and everything goes to the board or goes to a committee or whatever. So therefore, all I could do was say, I think we should do this. And a lot of times things actually happen, Chris. Decisions were made that I was against, and I didn't want them to happen. But I was the person that had to come out and say, here's what we've decided to do. And then I was the one that got criticised, as if a lot of people were assuming that it was my decision, whereas a lot of times it wasn't. So things like that were a bit frustrating, but I enjoyed some aspects of it. As I say, I was on the committees of FIFA Football Committee and the Uefa Football Committee, and that was pretty amazing because I got on the FIFA one when I turned up. I knew Franz Beckenbauer anyway from working with the Uefa one, but I didn't know anybody else who was on it. And then I found out that my colleagues on that committee were Pele, Eusebio, Bobby Charlton, Michel Platini, Dino Zoff. So I thought to myself, if there was a team getting picked here, I wouldn't get in it. It was all pretty famous and some of the biggest legends in the game that were on that committee. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. And I enjoyed some of the other aspects in terms of, trying to change some of the rules. I mean, I brought in the retrospective punishment for cheats, for people who are, simulation is the word you meant to use, but it was cheating. I brought in that, and we were the first country in the world to bring that in, Scotland. So I think that was good. And another one was the players, international players. I actually said we're not allowing people who come here and play in Scotland to change nationality and become Scottish players. But I said we should allow kids who actually have schooling here for 5 years minimum in school to change nationality and become Scottish if they so want. So there was 3 things like that worked out very well. So I was pleased with a lot of aspects of it, but some of it was very frustrating, Chris.
The SFA gets a rap from supporters and certainly from the media sometimes. Have been a bowling club mentality. Has that kind of moved on over the last few years? Also, Rod Petrie is the head of the association now. Is the SFA a modern body and fit for purpose, or do you think there's still aspects of the frustrating things that you found? Is that still kind of holding the association back and in turn holding the game back?
I think it has improved to a certain degree. I think there's still some aspects of it that need to be looked at, need to be improved. I don't think there's any doubt about that, because in the main, it's one of the problems you do get with democracy at times, that that people don't see it, the benefits that these things that change can make and improve. But in terms of the structure of the SFA, it was already changing when I was there, because they were looking at the Henry McLeish report to try and change it and to reduce the number of committees and the people making these decisions. So I think that the chief exec has got slightly more powers than I had at the time, but I don't think it's still they still have enough. I still think a lot of it's to do with the fact that a lot of decisions have to be made by the members and committees, and a lot of the members, no disrespect to them, but a lot of the members are not at a level that know the game the inside out, and in terms of the professional level and what's required in terms of taking the game forward professionally, because a lot of the people, the members, are come from different parts of the game. You know what I mean? You've got people from the school football, amateur football, non-league football, and all that sort of thing. So I think from that point of view that there's still improvements can be made, but I think it is better now than it's been for a while.
If we fast forward a wee bit again, and then also your return to Rangers as director of football in the ill-fated Craig White era. How do you kind of reflect on that? A missed opportunity, and you also inadvertently find yourself back at the club during one of the most tumultuous and unfortunate periods in its history.
Yes, and what happened was I spoke to him and I gave him, just said, like, I can help you with certain things if you do want some advice. So then I met him again and I gave him the advice in terms of the structure that you should be putting into the club. I said you should have a director of football in there. I wasn't looking for a job at all. And then he asked to meet me again, and he said, I want you to be the director of football. I've spoken to people, he said, and they've recommended you, and I want you to do it. And I said, well, okay. And I said, I'll consider it. And I considered it, and I thought, yeah, I would like to go back in there and make changes and turn the club around again, because it was like obviously a few problems that were happening. Financially was certainly one of them. Now, Craig White, I mean, I got to know, I wouldn't be too critical of him in one respect, because it wasn't until I didn't know him that well, but I definitely got the impression quite quickly that he wasn't a football man. He didn't know the game, didn't really understand it, and I just wondered. I thought, what's he doing here? What, and as I say, met him mainly. He was mainly with the chief operating officer when we met him together, and I did say on a couple of occasions, is this financial thing a problem? Is this club possibility to get into administration? And he did say on both occasions, it depends on the big tax case. That's what it was. That's what it was all about. If that could be the thing that takes us into that. And then one day, administration just happened. Well, he was at Murray Park, as it was then, and he just all of a sudden he got a phone call to say that the Inland Revenue, I think, were taking them the club into administration, and they had to deal with that. But I just felt, I don't know what he was doing there. I don't know whether he was just in there representing other people or what he was there for, but it certainly was a tough time, because I wanted to make changes. I had written papers for him, gave him these papers and saying, here's the changes we should make at the structure of the club in terms of youth development and different things. And he said, we'll get round to it. I'll get round. I said, when are you going to get round to it? Once we get other things sorted out, I'll get round to it. But we never did. And when we went into administration, I'd been there for about 6 months at the time. And I just went to the club when I found out it happened and just said, look, I'm leaving. They said, well, you maybe get a settlement. I said, I don't want a settlement. I said, I'm leaving. I don't want to be at this club anymore. And these times, when these turbulent times are happening, goodbye. And I just left the job immediately then. And I do regret it to this day going in there, because I felt my reputation was spoiled on the basis of who was running the club. And this time, it was the first time when the problems were really arising. And I felt that I was being, looked upon as if I was part of that. And I wasn't any part of it.
Obviously, when the financial collapse happened, there was a lot of anger from Rangers fans, also towards Craig White and the regime that was there, but also towards the football authorities as well, in terms of that whole situation that unfolded over the next couple of years. If you look at the situations down south with Bury and Bolton, I think their fans are a bit of resentment towards the EFL as well, with your Rangers and SFA hats on. Is there anything you think the SPL, SFL and the SFA could have done differently at that time to help Rangers out, if you like?
Well, I think they could have. I mean, the thing about it is, it'd probably been better. They could have stayed in the top division, but I mean, there was so much. So once again, you have the people, the voting here, and people wanting them out, and at least they were kept in the league, and that was always a worry as well. That I felt that people were going to be pushing here to have Rangers dismissed completely. All this stuff about being a new club and all that. And people have come out since and said UEFA, and people that have said it's not a new club. It's a new financial setup and all that sort of thing. So I felt that it was a really tough break to have to go down to the bottom divisions. And another thing as well, nobody gives Rangers credit for the fact that they helped finance Scottish football during those years. The money they were bringing in for these lower division clubs was money that they'd never seen before. I mean, the Rangers, the fans were coming out in their numbers. They didn't dismiss the club. They didn't stay away. They supported the team right through this time. The fans were absolutely unbelievable. And as I say, not just Rangers benefited from it in the end up, but so did a lot of other clubs in Scottish football. And thankfully, they bought their way back up, and they're now back up in the top league again. So I don't know whether it would have been the best thing to stay in the top division at that time, because it would have been tougher with the players they couldn't have the big name players and all that at that time, because a lot of them left. But nevertheless, it took its time, and the club have come back from that position and now are prospering again.
I've got 3 quick questions. Firstly, then, to delve into some of your personal career highs, Gordon. We've already touched on the fact that you've got a fantastic goal scoring record, particularly as a midfielder. It's a record that almost any player in that position would be envious of. Do you have a favourite goal that you look back on?
I think that the special ones. I think the Juventus goal is special, and because it was like, as I say, that was the goal that put us through and knocked them out, and it was fantastic. And it's quite funny. I met Dino Zoff, as I said, the goalkeeper from Juventus, was in my committee with FIFA, and he met me and he said, "We've never met before, Gordon. How are you?" And I said, "Oh, we have met before." And he went, "Oh yeah." And I said, "Yeah, I nodded to you in 1978 and, when I put the ball past you for the goal." And he was like, "All right." But that was special. I think I love the fact that my Old Firm debut was special, because we're down 2-0 at half time, and Jock Wallace came in and he went, "Sit down." I thought we were going to get an absolute bollocking and a real row here. It was the most positive team talk I've ever heard when you're getting beat, and especially when you're considering we're playing against Celtic at Ibrox. And he said, "I can't believe we're losing. We've been a better team. We're fitter than Celtic. They've scored 2 lucky goals. If we play that way in the second half, we're going to win this game." And we did. We won 3-2. I got the first and the third goal that day, and the first one was a better one. The third goal was just a tap over the line after the keeper had made the save. But the first goal, a shot Derek Johnson played it to me, so I enjoyed that goal as well. So it was special to get these goals, and I think that they were great memories for me.
And in terms of the dressing room and who you played with, do you have any favourite dressing room stories that are fit for sharing publicly?
There's always the type of thing that does happen. I mean, the players were, as I say, were always taking the mickey out. Big Peter McCloy and I were good pals. We travelled up together, and Big Peter, I remember one day, like at half time, he was like, Big Peter said, "Midfield player, I wish I was a midfield player." He said, I'd had 50 caps. And I said, "Peter, if you'd been a goalkeeper, you'd had 50 caps, And he just, the dressing room did laugh at that, because I hit back, but I had a tendency to wait and see what people said and have a go back, because he did get a bit of stick. It's typical of football. But as I say, I think that, in terms of the stuff about the dressing rooms, it was always good banter and everything. The players, could give each other a bit of stick at times, and you just had to take it, because it was part of the game. And as I say, you're all teammates together. When it comes to a match on a Saturday, you're all relying on one another. So that the atmosphere at the club at the time was brilliant. Great,
that camaraderie.
Yes.
Just one last question from me. I read a fantastic story about how you helped influence the naming of your grandson last year. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, it was my daughter was having a baby, and she was thinking of boys' names. And I just threw a name into her. I said, "What about Edson?" She went, "That's lovely. That's a lovely name." She says, "I'm going to go for that." And then once she'd agreed to do it, that was when I told her that that's Pele. His real name is Edson Narentes de Nascimento. I said, so the little grandson is Pele. So the other one, the actual I've got 2 grandsons. The other one's called Xavi. So he's got a football name as it is. He's Xavi, and that's Edson now. Although most people don't know that Pele is actually Edson, But as I say, it was fantastic. Finish off with telling you, one of my greatest thrills was the fact that we had a discussion when I was at the FIFA football committee about what's the definition of an own goal. And we're all discussing it. Other people were saying what it was. And I said, "I've got an idea." I said, "I believe that if the original effort is on target and deflects in, then that's given to the player who's had the original effort. But if the original effort that it has on goal is off target and deflects in, then that's an own goal." And who's the first person to put his hand up and say, "I agree with Gordon," was Pele. Pele agreed with me. And that is the rule. If you check the rule for own goals, that is what was agreed should be the definition of an own goal. So I'm so pleased that I never played with Pelé, but I'm so pleased he voted along with me.
Excellent. And I love that we've probably got a couple of superstars in the making to join your footballing family dynasty.
Yeah, that'd be great. See which one. Edson, we'll maybe need to change his name to Pelé if he starts to become a good player.
So a huge thank you to Gordon as we've spoken, look back on his Rangers career. It's always fantastic here when we get ex-players that have come on, and we've had Stevie Smith, Andy Little, Derek Johnston, and Gordon Smith has been excellent. He spoke really well. Thank you for that, Gordon. We're going to go on. Obviously, it's been a great time for Rangers on the pitch. We've had a really positive start to the season. We've done really well in Europe so far. Huge game on Thursday, huge game on Sunday, and everything's been really positive. Obviously, off the field, there's serious issues which we'll touch upon. But I'd like to concentrate on what's going on the pitch so far. Chris, Rangers have started really well. How impressed have you been with the start to the season and progress in Europe?
So far, I think they've ticked every box and passed every test, or so some more convincingly than others that they had to. I think we spoke at the start of the season, and you basically mapped out the first few games domestically and in Europe and said they had to win every league game leading up to the Old Firm game, also had to win in the Betfred Cup, and had to go as far as they could in Europe. And so far they've managed to do all of that. Thursday night's a really interesting one against Legia Warsaw, and then obviously Sunday takes care of itself. And I think once you come out the other side of the international break, I think it's Livingston at Ibrox that day. If Rangers can have a successful week this week and then really capitalise on that against Livingston after Scotland games, I think you'll know a whole lot more about just what this team has got and where this team could be heading this season.
Gordon, the league campaign so far, obviously a very successful victory at home to Hibs, but in the away games we saw a different kind of performance at Kilmarnock and at St Mirren that perhaps we're kind of speculating and hoping we maybe didn't see last season in terms of getting the 3 points. In terms of this season and what's happened so far, how confident are you that it's Rangers are looking better placed to have a successful year?
Well, I think that what's been good about it is last season, at the very end of the season, as the season went on, they were beginning to compete a lot better against Celtic. And we saw that in the matches that Celtic was not as big a worry as they'd been previously in terms of losing comfortably to them. But what happened was Rangers were throwing away the points in other games. And that's the key aspect of it, because you have to win the other games. You've got to be up for it, because the thing about you find that when you're playing for Rangers, I'm sure the Celtic find the same, is that teams are motivated to play against you. This is sometimes the best that these players play when they're playing against the Old Firm, because they so want to do well. And that's what you see all the time. And Rangers were losing games they shouldn't have been losing last season. But this season, it's working well so far, because they've only had the 2 draws. Every other game's been a victory. 2 draws, and they were both in the Europa League against Progress and obviously Legia Warsaw. And in the league, getting these crucial wins away from home. I know they've been tight. I mean, they won 2-1 at Kilmarnock, 1-0 away to St Mirren. But the thing, it was a tough one against St Mirren in one respect. St Mirren just sat in. They didn't have a go at Rangers at all. So you're playing against a team who've got a home match, and yet they don't even want to come out and attack. So that's a sign how strong Rangers are at the moment, that the teams are afraid of them. So the key to this one will be playing on next Sunday against Celtic, and making sure that if you get the victory, that should give them a big impulse in order to take things forward, to say, right, okay, we're beating Celtic, but we need to then look at the coming games after that, when you've got Livingston, St Johnstone to play, Aberdeen and Hamilton. There's quite a few of the teams, I'm looking at them, and they're not really doing that well at this season at the moment. You look at Hearts and Aberdeen, for example, but you can be pretty sure when they come up against Rangers, these players will lift their game. So you have to be up for it every game. But Rangers, the great thing at the moment is they have a good squad, a strong squad. And I think Steven Gerrard's using it well, because what you're finding is there's a lot of rivalry for positions to get in the team. And when that is the case, then you do tend to get better performances, because nobody can take it for granted that they're going to play in the team unless they perform. And that's why the bigger squad is actually, I think, having a good effect at the moment.
Caroline, you have just returned from a fantastic trip out to Warsaw, and you've got a great podcast on Heart and Hand, Blue Scarfs on, where you've covered that trip with Marina and Samantha. How good was Warsaw, and how much are you enjoying the start to the season from the team?
Yeah, the Warsaw trip was fantastic. Clearly, it would have been even better had we got a sneaky away goal. But actually, I thought the performance was really sound, really solid from the team, as it has been, like it's been said already. Throughout the whole season so far, it's clearly a massive week. But every test we've come up against so far, we've managed to handle in quite a different manner to some of the challenges we had last season. We seem to just be developing and growing in confidence and having that self-belief that we can, like you say, have a successful season this year. So yeah, really looking forward to the kind of return leg on Thursday. It seems like it's going to be a kind of massive, almost like a cup final type performance required on Thursday. They're a difficult team, I think, to beat, but I'm not sure that they offer too much going forward, Legia. So I'd like to think that we can get through to the group stages. And then on to Sunday, that takes care of itself. We shouldn't need to ask for any of these players to kind of up their game. They did a fantastic job last season, particularly at Ibrox, against Celtic. So more of the same, and we could be very happy this time next week.
Caroline, just to ask also as well, we've got a week left of the transfer window, and then it finally closes, and 4LadsHadADream can rejoice for another few months until January. Are you looking at Rangers thinking we need to bring in anybody else?
Do you know that kind of left-back position is one that we've talked about quite a lot, and there's a bit of debate, I think, given how key Barisic was for us in our last game. There's definitely debate about whether or not we should be spending there. I'm probably more concerned about who may be leaving before the end of the window. In my opinion, Morelos is irreplaceable, so I don't think we need to take anyone else in, as much as I'd love to see Kent in particular joining us again. I'm more concerned that we may lose players.
What about yourself, Gordon? Do you think there's a need for Rangers to dip into the transfer market before the window closes?
I think Caroline's made a good point. I think left back is a problem. I think that you've got three players there basically using Barisic. You've got Halliday's been in there as well, and Flanagan, and I think none of the three of them you would say is outstanding enough to say he's captured that position. So I think they're fighting for that role, sort of thing, and that's why maybe a natural left back, somebody who stands out. Barisic is best going forward, I think, but I've always had my little doubts about him as a defender. So that's very important that they make sure they get the right player in there. I think the only thing I can see why Morelos would go is if they bring in another striker. If they've got somebody else who's coming in who's going to be challenging for a first team spot, then if that money is maybe required, and the only way they can get that money is to sell somebody, then it will be Morelos if it is another striker who's coming in. And I think that would be the only case where I would see he would go. If they're not bringing in a striker, then they really need to keep him, because you need to have players challenging like Defoe and Morelos are for that striker position.
Chris, that's a perfect time to bring you in, and those that follow Chris on social media will know how on the point Chris is with transfer stories and things like that. There was a story yesterday linking us with Moussa Konaté, French striker, for £9 million, and I sent you a message at the time saying surely this isn't correct. And it sent the kind of heart racing a wee bit, because if we're paying that kind of money or speculating about that kind of money, then you got to assume that Morelos is away. But club have played that down. We obviously know that from today. But a week left, Chris. What are you expecting as the window closes, if anything?
I think it's quite hard to tell in many ways. I don't think Rangers need anything as such. I don't think there's one area of the team you say they have to go and really spend money in. I think if they got a left back to give you a better option there, I certainly wouldn't say no to it. In terms of forward areas, if they got Ryan Kent, it would also be a huge psychological boost for them as much as anything else. And I think a lot depends on the outgoings. Now, as we've said in the last couple of podcasts, there's a bit of deadwood there that needs moved on. Now you're still looking at trying to get Eros Gresda out the door. Obviously, Graham Dorrans and Jason Holt are far out the picture as well. Joe Dodo isn't going to do anything for Rangers, so he has to move on. But as Caroline was saying, I think a lot depends on what money is on the table for James Tavernier and Alfredo Morelos. I think Stephen Gerrard's comments at his press conference on Friday, I wasn't there unfortunately, I was travelling back from Warsaw, but his comments to the Sunday papers regarding expecting a bid or almost kind of anticipating a bid for Morelos and or Tavernier were interesting. I don't know if he was trying to kind of prepare the Rangers fans for some bad news over the next week. I think a lot will depend on how things go in the Europa League for certain teams. You might find that once teams progress or not on Thursday, that might then harden up transfer plans. It certainly will, from Rangers' point of view, if they've got more games, Stephen Gerrard might go and look to try and make one more move if possible. But if you are a Spanish team or an Italian team or a German team and you are looking for a striker, you then get through to group stages, you've got a wee bit more money to spend. I think Alfredo Morelos then, unfortunately from Rangers' point of view, comes into a lot of people's thinking. Again, I have to agree with Caroline. I think right now at this time, Morelos is very, very difficult to replace. I say that it's interesting, Kanate from France was played down, but I don't see where you get a striker that gives you what Morelos gives you in terms of his play, and certainly in terms of 30 goals a season. To try and get somebody for that money and get them in and get them hitting the ground running is going to be really, really difficult for Rangers. And if they did decide to sell him over the next a week or so, I think they're taking a big gamble in terms of their Premiership title aspirations.
Yeah, I think everybody's kind of said what the majority of the Rangers support think, that Morelos is pretty much irreplaceable. And the good thing about Alfredo is that we've seen, obviously, against the Danes, and we've seen the other night, it's starting to look like Alfredo's clicking back into the kind of destroying mode that he was in last year. Minus, I must say, his temperament looks a lot better. I'm praying and hoping that's a thing. Gordon, quickly, just to ask you on that, it's an interesting point. You've played for Rangers, you understand the pressure. Do you see a difference in Alfredo this year?
Yes, I do, actually. It's funny, I was going to come in on that, Stevie, because I think that is something that I did a piece on it before, saying it's something you have to work on. And I said there should be no hesitation in even getting somebody in who does sports psychology on him, just to see what's causing this. Because I looked at his record when he was playing in Finland, and he had no problem at all whatsoever. No red cards over there, and hardly any bookings. So it's obviously something that it's a Scottish game in terms of how they play here, but it's also he's getting wound up by people. So what they need to try and get him is teach him the fact that these people are trying to do this to you, and you have to calm down and not get affected by it. And I think they've done something on that, because he's taken some heavy challenges this year, and he doesn't seem to be reacting the same. So I think that is good, because that if you get that out of his game, then all the other aspects he's got makes him top class. And the fact is that what they do have, and I do think he is top class as well, Defoe is a tremendous player. And I think that, the two of them are competing there. You're playing with one striker, but either one of them, I would have no hesitation to be quite comfortable when the team's picked either one of them being in there and knowing that the other one can come on at some stage, because they are both top class, both can score goals. And as I say, if Morelos controls his temperament, then he really is going to become a much more valuable player, because that's probably the one thing that has held him back in terms of people looking at him and saying, would I pay a lot of money for this guy? Not in terms of the way he's been behaving, but if he solves that, then he becomes a very expensive player.
I've got another reason for wanting Alfredo to stay. Very quickly, my sons are 2 and 3, and over the last 7, 8, 9 years, we've not had a lot to cheer about. We've not had a lot of heroes and icons. So something really interesting has happened in my house. Is I've tried to get the boys subtly into kind of football and Rangers and buy them wee tops and things. And all of a sudden this season, my oldest boy, DJ, has latched on to Alfredo Morelos. And I don't know how it's happened. I've not overly encouraged it. I've not said he's a star man or anything. But any time now, there's Alfredo. I love Alfredo. And when you're watching him and he comes on, on the telly, and that's him. His toys are down, infatuated. I love Alfredo. And I just think that's amazing, because at a time where, I grew up during 9 in a row, and we had heroes everywhere in that team. And I just think that for the younger generation, there's something infectious about Alfredo in our team. And I think not only kind of is it important that he stays in a team-wise, but for a support, I don't think we've had an icon, a kind of hero as much as we do Alfredo at the moment. Do you think that's a kind of a fair comment, Gordon, on Morelos?
I think so, yeah. As I say, the one thing that was holding him back, and I'm very impressed by him in terms of what he's got to offer. His pace, his strength. He's very, very strong. He can hold players off, and he can finish, put the ball in the net. And I think all these things would make you into legendary status at Rangers in terms of what he did. I mean, he still had a fantastic season last year, 30 goals, and considering how his behaviour, he's ordered off 5 times. I mean, one of them got rescinded, but all these ordering offs and loads of bookings and all that, and you're thinking, oh, he's got to get a grip of himself, because why does he think that people are doing this to him? Because he's such a threat. He's a player who teams are finding it very hard to deal with. So there's no doubt about it that he, goes into legendary status, and I think that's why a lot of Rangers fans wouldn't want him sold at all, unless you're bringing in somebody who you're guaranteeing is going to be better and is a better player and can score as many goals, if not more. That's the only reason you could see it. But you're never ever sure about that, because at least they know now the player they have there does the job. He is a player that scores, and that's why that makes him really so prevalent in terms of what he's got to offer. And I think that from that point of view, I can see why your wee boys will look at him and say he's the man, because the wee boys love to see somebody that scores goals, don't they?
Absolutely, and let's hope, like everyone said, that I think it's key that he stays. I'd personally be absolutely gutted if Alfredo Morelos left, because even for me, I've had a season ticket over 20 odd years. He's as close to kind of hero status for me as anybody is in the squad. Moving on, and as we get towards the end of the podcast, unfortunately, we have to talk about what happened last week with Uefa sanctions, and it's a very difficult subject to cover. It's obviously very emotive, and people are very emotional about it amongst the support. Chris, this is a difficult subject. It's a subject that's really troubled me since the news came about. Can you maybe explain a wee bit about what's happened, why these charges have come about, and the exact severity of the situation that Rangers find themselves in?
I don't think you can underestimate or underappreciate the severity of the situation, to be honest with you. Also, the Europa League tie against St Joseph's at Ibrox a few weeks ago, the Rangers fans have been reported for offensive singing or racist chanting from that game through the UEFA Observer. That has then progressed to a UEFA disciplinary case, and the outcome from that case is that 3,000 seats will be closed off in the Broom Loan and Club Deck on Thursday night. I think a lot of the Rangers fans were quite taken aback by that sanction, and quite shocked by it. But if you go through the UEFA rules, this is the first protocol. This is what happens when you breach these particular rules. Next time, UEFA will shut the entire stadium, and if the behaviour doesn't improve and these cases come about, more so for Rangers, they will find themselves kicked out of European competition. And as I said in my Evening Times column on Monday, the very prospect of that should embarrass and shame Rangers fans. The fact that the people that love the club as much, the fact that they could be responsible through their own behaviour for potentially getting the club kicked out of European competition should really send a shockwave through the support. And I think the fact that the stand closure was the key punishment in this case, I think it was probably a good thing. If it had been a warning or a fine, people would have brushed it off and said, that's fine. Now the club can take a warning, the club can pay a £50,000 fine, whatever it is. I think this kind of hard-hitting one should get the message through. And again, as I said in my column on Monday, MD that still knowingly puts the club in danger and disadvantages the team on a on a big European match day really needs to have a long hard look at themselves.
Probably prevalent to say here that we approached the club to ask for a representative to come on the show tonight, either in form of the SLO or perhaps somebody from the management to come and speak to us. That we haven't been able to organise that. Obviously, it's short notice. Rangers directors and management had a meeting today regarding this, so we would expect the club to come out and speak further to the support. And we also spoke to Club 1872, who again happy to come on at a later stage, but not tonight because they are currently engaging as shareholders with the club as well. So it's fair to say that the club are going to come out, but I think it's also fair to say that everyone on this podcast at the moment, and hopefully everyone that listens knows what we're talking about, without spelling it out and without saying there is add-ons on certain songs, there are certain phrases that we need to leave behind. There's certain songs, the Billy Boys, Super Rangers, that we just can't sing anymore. And it doesn't matter if we rebrand them or change the words. It needs to move on. And I'm not in a position where I'm going to be two-faced and say or blame any one individual. I think that we as a support, we need to all look at ourselves and we need to all move on. Gordon, how difficult is this for Rangers and how big a problem is it, and what do the club need to do to move on and sort this and stop these kind of sanctions coming on us even more, like Chris was talking about?
I think this is quite a simple thing now, and I think that this is the way ahead in terms of actually changing things in that respect, because what you're saying is here's what the consequences are of people singing these inappropriate songs. And it's all very well to say, oh, you shouldn't do it. As soon as punishments are coming in, and major punishments in this case would be Rangers having the stadium closed, a stand that's happening this time, as mentioned there already. Chris is saying it could be the whole stadium. Next time it could be a disqualification from a tournament. I believe that the SPFL and the SFA will begin to have to look at this now too, because they'll come under pressure to say, if you're not dealing with this as well, how can you have UEFA dealing with it and you're not? And when these things are stopped at that level, they should be getting stopped at club level and domestic level too. So I think this is just the start of changes that are going to happen. And I think what you'll find is if the fans begin to get a grip of it and say, we can't do this, we can't get down that line, it will stop, because the fans will be self-policing this too. Other members of the fan groups will be saying, we don't want this because we are going to affect the club. So I think this is a major thing that's happened. I know it sounds terrible that this part of the stand's been shut for Thursday night, but it's the only way ahead in terms of getting people to change their behaviour. And that's regardless of how they feel in terms of their feelings about all these matters. Doesn't matter. They shouldn't be expressing it in this way if the club are going to suffer. So I think that's very straightforward.
Caroline, we are the kind of rank and file. We're there every week. You've done European trips this year. You're in the stands. It's difficult. It is a difficult situation for us. I'm sure you feel the same, because on social media, there's if you say, we've got to back the club, we've got to do what we're told, we're accused of being hand wringers and playing it down. But it seems simple for me. Rangers have spelled it out for us now. The SLO, Greg Marshall, was very clear on the internet last night as well. This is so severe and we're at crisis point in terms of what UEFA could do next. We saw a good reaction from the support yesterday. What do you think needs to happen as a fan base going forward?
Yeah, I completely agree that I think the fans have to unite on this, and I think there is a bit of a division of opinion, perhaps around whether or not the punishment fits the crime, and a debate about whether or not terminology is sectarian or racist. But ultimately, I think that we have to think of the greater good and the possibility of not getting the chance to play for that financial boost that Europe offers is just not worth thinking about. So for me, I think the club could do a little bit more in being quite prescriptive on it. and just continue to hammer home that message. And I think as fans, self-policing, as Gordon mentioned, may come into it a little bit. If somebody next to you, isn't adhering to what we know now are the rules that we could face serious consequences for. I think it's important that we call it out, because we can't face the possibility of having the entire stadium closed. Stephen Gerrard's spoken about how important the fans are going to be on Thursday and any subsequent games if we're lucky enough to get through to the group stages. So we need to box clever here, and we have to evolve as a club. And UEFA make the rules. If we're in their competition, then we need to follow suit. And I think, as Gordon quite rightly said, domestically, I think we'll see some similar changes in the future. So it's best to be on the front foot about this.
Gordon, before we finish this podcast, your experience, you've been a director of football at Rangers, albeit in difficult circumstances. You're the director of football, hypothetically now. What's your move in terms of from the club, and how would you combat this issue?
In terms of, I'd just be saying to the fans, it's more or less, you support the club. It's a football team. Support us. I said, regardless of what your feelings are, whether you are a bigot or you're not a bigot, never mind that. You come along to support the team, and these things are banned now, and if the club is going to be punished for it, then you shouldn't be doing anything like that. You shouldn't be singing any of these songs. I think we have to do it not only for the European games, but we have to do it domestically too, because otherwise people will forget when these other games come out. They maybe still do it because they get away with it domestically, and the club should be saying this has to stop completely, both for the European games, but mainly as well on a week-to-week basis. And only then can the club go forward and be quite comfortable that this is going to be taken out of the game.
Chris, on that, just one final note. Do Rangers need to show a degree of, I want of a better expression, degree of balls here and come out and spell it out for the supporters? Name what they can't do and effectively hold their hand. Because there could be, there's youngsters coming now, 16, 17, 18, 20, who back in 2006 when this all started with the Billy Boys and things maybe aren't aware and aren't educated enough. Do the club have to be tough? Do they have to recognise it? Do they have to spell it out and just say, you can't do this anymore? You can't sing these add-ons. You can't sing the slogans. You can't say these songs. Do you see the club doing that, and do you think it's necessary?
I don't think it should be necessary. No, the Rangers shouldn't have to come out and tell fans what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And I think every fan should know what that line is. They should all have a sense of common sense, a sense of decency about them as well. But I do think the club will have more to say on it. I do think the club will be as strong as they can and need to be, because they're fully aware of the ramifications and how serious this could get for them. As you say, there was a meeting on Monday to go through to go through events of recent days and the kind of way forward. I said we were both at the launch of Everyone Anyone campaign at IRIX a few weeks ago, and I know firsthand the amount of work that's gone into that, not just over a couple of weeks. That was a long time in the making to pull it all together and to try and get that campaign up and running. The work that was put into that and the work that will come from that, I don't think will be in vain. I think you will see really positive steps coming from that. I know clubs are an easy target when things like this happen, and people always say they've not done enough, they don't do this, they don't that. Rangers are being proactive here. Could they be more proactive? Possibly. I think they now have a chance to really lead the way on this, because they know how serious it can get. So it's in Rangers' interest, and it's in the Rangers fans' interest for this to really get sorted out, and for the behaviour of the fans to improve.
With that said, I'd like to thank our guest tonight, Mr. Chris Jack. Chris, thanks for coming on.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me as always.
I also like to thank Caroline Morrison, who, again, Caroline's come over from Heart and Hand, where she has her own show. You can listen to that and subscribe on Patreon, which I encourage everyone to do. Caroline, thanks for coming on. Hopefully we will have you on again. Thank you.
No, thanks very much. I'm delighted to be asked on with such esteemed company.
And finally, Mr. Gordon Smith. Gordon, thanks very much for a wonderful insight into your career and staying with us to talk about Rangers and recent events.
Stevie, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've enjoyed it, and also to Chris and Caroline, I really enjoyed the chat and what they have to say as well on the game, and hopefully everyone's enjoyed their listen as well.
On that as well, I'd like to thank our podcast sponsors, G4 Claims, who the money they provided us, we put towards our fundraising for Rangers Youth Development Company, and it also helps run the podcast. And it's a huge thanks to Graham and Frankie and the guys at Gersnet. Please get yourself onto Gersnet Forum. It's a fantastic forum for Rangers fans. It's free and regular podcasts on there which you can listen to. On behalf of myself, 4LadsHadADream blog is going strong on Twitter. We have our first ever live show. Myself and Chris will be hosting that in the Loudon Tavern on Friday evening. We've already raised £3,000 from that to add to the 6,000 that we've already donated over to Rangers Youth Development cause. And that's what the Rangers family are all about. We've had a tough time off the park in the last few weeks, and it's been difficult, but it's time to rally as a fan base because we are the greatest fans in the world. We do have the greatest club in the world, and we are going places under an iconic manager in Steven Gerrard. Let's support the club. Let's do it loudly, properly and proudly. Rangers Football Club, we have to look after it. Let's move forward. Let's have a successful week. Let's get the job done on Thursday night against Leisure Warsaw, and let's win the game on Sunday and go top of the league. Everybody, thanks for listening. Ignore the nonsense, the irrelevant and the noise.